This is part 2, episode 175. Just when Long Houchen wanted to say something, the King of Eastern interjected, "Girl, I think it's better for you to increase Master's internal spiritual energy, because you don't have to worry about anything like that happening to Master." Huh? Yi Xiaolei looked at the King of Eastern in doubt. The King of Eastong said proudly, "Master has inherited the divine throne of eternity and creation, so he's temporarily become our Lord of Eternity." The divine throne of eternity and creation was a supra-divine tool used by the Creator God to create the realms. All the existences who have once become lords of eternity had received an imprint from the Creator God. Regardless of the principles of the planes, they don't have to follow any of them, and when they become a god, they will receive a special godhead from the Creator God's imprint. As an existence that supervises the world for the Creator God, their lives will be extremely long, but not infinite. Yi Xiaolei looked at the King of Eastern rather dumbstruck. "Are you saying that he can be like the demon god emperor, and not be bound by the principles of the realm?" The King of Eastern said, "Of course. Master's an existence chosen by the Creator God. How could he be as simple as you imagine him to be? Being able to join Master will be your smartest decision." Yi Xiaolei nodded and she looked at Long Houchen with rather mixed feelings. "Since that's the case, let's start right now." She suddenly found that she was no longer that important to Long Houchen as an intelligent spiritual stove. "Hold on, Xiaolei." Long Houchen raised his hand to stop Yi Xiaolei. "Don't you want me?" Yi Xiaolei was not in a good mood right now, so she immediately misinterpreted Long Houchen. Long Houchen shook his head with a smile, "Of course not. It's just that I want to tell you something before you become my intelligent spiritual stove. Recently, I found a suitable body for Yating, so she's no longer my light elemental spiritual stove anymore, but a fairy queen of light. I believe that in the near future, I will find a suitable body for you as well. When that happens, please choose to be a person. Be a real human. Maybe you'll feel happier like that." Yi Xiaolei was dumbstruck. She stared at Long Houchen blankly, and didn't make a single sound for quite some time. Long Houchen rubbed her head gently. He squatted down and looked at her face to face. "We're friends. We're not just bound by a pact. I hope you can find happiness in the future. Although I don't know how to make you happy, I will treat you like a human as much as I can." "All right," Yi Xiaolei let out a soft interjection of agreement. She suddenly spread her arms, hugged Long Houchen around the neck and burst out in tears. Gently stroking her long hair, Long Houchen used his gentle light element to comfort her sorrow. It was also at this moment that he discovered in his surprise that his hand fell through her body. Yi Xiaolei's body suddenly turned into green light. Specks of green light floated about and moved up his hand, enveloping him completely very soon. The large quantity of light specks gradually formed a swirl, gently rotating around Long Houchen. That was a gentle aura filled with life. In the world of Eastern, all the vegetation, within several hundred kilometers, began to shine with green light. The King of Eastern said in complete fascination, "What pure power of nature! It's fantastic." Gentle green light began to fuse into Long Houchen's body through his chest. It just happened to fuse into where his heart of eternity was. Yi Xiaolei definitely could sense Hao Yue's aura on him. Long Houchen and Hao Yue's connection was the closest about the head, and then the heart. The method that Yi Xiaolei chose to use was completely different to what Hao Yue did. The power from Hao Yue, which dwelled in his spiritual pellet, was an independent existence, while Yi Xiaolei's power of nature directly fused with Long Houchen's heart of eternity. It would not be independent. When she began to fuse with him, Long Houchen sensed it. He knew that Yi Xiaolei would make him even stronger by fusing with him like this. However, this meant that she had completely ignored his suggestion earlier. By fusing with her like this, Yi Xiaolei would never be able to separate from his body unless he died. Obviously, she would not be able to become a human like what happened with Yating. Yi Xiaolei's voice rang out in Long Houchen's head, "Long Houchen, I don't want to call you my master. I want to call you my elder brother. I don't want to become a human. There is also a lot of deception and trickery among you humans, so becoming a human might bring me even more issues. That is not what I want. From the moment before, I already knew my happiness is. My happiness is being by your side, so you can protect and take care of me. For that is enough. The demon god emperor had said earlier that if I become his, he would take me to see many fascinating worlds. I believe you can do the same. I won't regret sticking with you. From today onwards, I am your intelligent spiritual stove, as well as your younger sister. You have to take good care of me. He. The green light began to expand from Long Houchen's body, slowly flowing through his entire body. Long Houchen's fifth rank of the ninth step spiritual energy began to grow once more. It was not fast, but it was very steady. At the same time, Long Houchen felt scorching heat appear in his body. His body was currently being nurtured by the dense aura of life. Yi Xiaolei did not listen to the King of Eastern's suggestion. Instead, she used all the power she had after fusing with Long Houchen to increase both his internal and external spiritual energy. From then onwards, she was a part of Long Houchen, so of course she hoped that Long Houchen would have an even stronger body. With her vitality, not only did Long Houchen's external spiritual energy increase drastically, it had extended his lifespan as well. Long Houchen was not aware of this. Yi Xiaolei was not powerful, but she possessed the soul of a god and a fraction of a god's power. Combined with her pure and unadulterated vitality, she had extended Long Houchen's life by 1,000 years at the very least. The aura of life flowed through and expanded in Long Houchen's body. He had let himself go completely, sensing the airiness from the fusion of power. In that moment, he suddenly understood something. It was an understanding related to the divine throne of eternity and creation. The three powerhouses of the domain of eternity had told him that the name of the divine thorn, the divine throne of eternity and creation, had ancient origins. It was personally named by the Creator God. What was eternity? What was creation? What was being created? The engravings on the divine throne of eternity and creation seemed to give the answer. The earth, nature, life, the stars, sun and moon were being created. And why was all this created? For life to continue. Creating life was what eternity was mainly about. All the other creations were just for creating life. Perhaps people had different understandings about eternity and creation, but in that moment, Long Houchen had developed his own understanding. The heart of eternity began to slow down as gentle vitality ran and flowed through his body. If someone could see Long Houchen's current situation right now, they would definitely be utterly shocked, because a heart had grown in Long Houchen's chest. The heart of eternity was not a real heart. It was a heart of spiritual energy created by a combination of Elux's past constitution, as a sign of light as his cultivation of light, which was further modified using his understanding of the human body and the necromancy he had cultivated. This heart of eternity had all the abilities of a normal human heart. Even every single blood vessel was the same. It also had enough energy to last for at least 1,000 years. As long as Long Houchen's cultivation remained, the heart of eternity would never stop beating, and it would make Long Houchen stronger and stronger, granting him more and more power. After all, Elux was not the creator god. He could not create a heart that was exactly the same as Long Houchen's original one from nothing. In that moment, the sight of wonder was this creation. Under the effects of this dense vitality, the blood in Long Houchen's chest had used the heart of eternity as a mold and actually formed a heart. Long Houchen was completely unaware about this. He had no idea that he had undergone a process of metamorphosis. Actually, Elux never told him when he revived him that from a certain aspect, he was technically an undead. Could a human without a heart still be called a human? However, Long Houchen was just unaware of all of this, and Elux had not explained it either. Coupled with his pure light element, no one suspected that either. It had to be mentioned that the heart of eternity created by Elux was almost like a work of God. It was definitely the greatest masterpiece throughout history among necromancers. However, no matter how great it was, it still made him an undead. As a matter of fact, when Elux purified himself, he still felt rather proud of himself. The only sign of light that had managed to mature completely possessed the crystallization of his life's work. However, it was different now. With Yi Xiaolei's fusion, Long Haochen's aura of life increased drastically, and as a result, the issue of missing a true heart was revealed. The power of life that Yi Xiaolei had fused into his body naturally treated this as a wound and immediately began to heal it. If the heart of eternity was not there, the healing would not have been successful, because Long Haochen would be dead during the healing process. Without a heart that could beat, it was useless no matter how perfect the healing was. However, the situation now was very special. As the heart of eternity thumped, a completely new heart gradually grew as Long Haochen comprehended the meaning of life and creation. Faint light flickered and a gentle smile appeared on Long Haochen's face. He only felt that his body was very warm, and that the heart of eternity seemed to thump with even more power. He had no idea why. The heart of eternity was gradually fusing with the new heart, and every single vessel absorbed the power of the heart of eternity. The creation of life was the most wondrous process. Although Yi Xiaolei could sense the danger in this, she was unable to communicate with Long Haochen as she fused with her. She could only do everything she could to protect this creation. The King of Eastern stood by their side quietly. He had become Long Haochen's protector now. At the same time, he could sense the wondrous presence from Long Haochen's body. He found the dense vitality to be very close. Gradually, the green light weakened and all gathered in Long Haochen's chest. Long Haochen felt like new life had just been breathed into him. He found his entire body to be even more transparent and filled with even more vitality. The green light gently pulsed about his chest. That was his heartbeat. The new heart had completely formed in his chest, and it had fused with the heart of eternity perfectly. This was definitely the strongest heart in human history. Yi Xiaolei fell into a slumber in Long Haochen's chest tiredly. As an intelligent spiritual stove, basically all of the power from the fusion went into the heart. Gradually rousing from his state of comprehension, Long Haochen instinctively placed his right hand on his chest. His chest felt warm. It was an indescribably nice feeling. The heart of eternity's beating seemed to be weaker than before, but it did not affect his body at all. At the same time, he could sense Yi Xiaolei's consciousness remaining in his chest. However, he did not know why she had fallen into a slumber. Perhaps that was the consequences of fusing with him as an intelligent spiritual stove. However, to Long Haochen's surprise, he could clearly sense that his fusion with Yi Xiaolei was complete. However, there were no signs that his internal or external spiritual energy had increased like the times before. Everything remained the same. However, he came to an understanding very soon. Recently, his cultivation had essentially skyrocketed. It was not good for it to increase too much all of a sudden. Fortunately, the comprehension earlier allowed his understanding to increase as well. It would not fall too far behind his cultivation. After giving notice to the King of Eastern, Long Haochen chose to return. As the Lord of Eternity, he could enter the domain of eternity whenever he wished. The world of black and red appeared before him once more. Perhaps due to Kia's power of purifying being too great, the air there was clearly fresher than However, who knew how long that would last? Including Hao Yue, everyone was waiting on the hill where it had evolved. Long Haochen's return immediately made them all open their eyes. With a flash, Long Haochen landed before his companions. He looked at Hao Yue first. Hao Yue's aura had completely stabilized now. The terrifying aura of destruction from earlier was contained, or at least it was impossible to tell from the surface, because the bright glimmer of hope would not be able to remain by his side if it was not. Its 8 heads extended over slowly and stacked upon each other in front of Long Haoche. It seemed rather funny. However, none of the people there could laugh after witnessing Hao Yue's terrifying strength from before. They could still clearly remember how the powerful Knight of Judgment of the Dead and Lich King were unable to fight back at all. They were completely overwhelmed in a single moment. If Long Haochen had not interfered, the 2 undead kings probably would have died to Hao Yue's attacks already. Long Haochen raised his hands to touch the 2 new heads. He said to the dark golden head, "Your abilities should be of the metal element, right? I'll call you Little Gold in the future then. As for you," he looked at the huge, purplish-blue head and said, "I'll call you Little Thunder." Receiving names from Long Houchen, Little Gold and Little Thunder were very happy. They reached over and nudged Long Houchen. They were extremely close to him. Sensing Hao Yue's deep attachment to him, Long Houchen's worry from earlier vanished. Kia said, "Houchen, what happened to Yi Xiaolei?" Long Houchen frowned. "I might have to face against the demon god emperor sooner than I expected." Immediately, he told them what he saw when he ventured to the illusory paradise. Before Long Houchen had teleported away, he was unaware that the threat to Yi Xiaolei's life came from the demon god emperor. Currently, humanity was nowhere close to being sufficiently prepared, and the demon god emperor had already seen him with his own eyes. With how determined the demon god emperor was to kill him, he would definitely take action. Sima Xian said viciously, "We'll do whatever we need to do. If he wants to come, then let him come. If the demons begin the holy war, who knows who'll be the victor?" The current bright glimmer of light was no longer the 64th Commander Squad on the battlefield 5 years ago. They now possessed the true strength to face off against the major forces of the demons. Everyone was ready for that. Long Houchen nodded slightly. "That's all we can do. Let's go back and prepare as quickly as possible." After saying that, the first one to respond was actually Hao Yue. A layer of purple mist rose up from his body, and before Long Houchen could respond, it shrunk at an astonishing speed. In the blink of an eye, it had actually vanished. "Hao Yue!" Long Houchen called out its name in surprise. At this moment, a palm-sized figure suddenly leapt before him, tottering about as it flapped its wings. Long Houchen had no idea how to respond. The hand-sized thing was actually Hao Yue, a shrunken version of Hao Yue. Extending his right hand, Hao Yue landed on its center. Its 8 heads constantly moved about, and it expressed excitement to Hao Yue. Clearly, it was very proud of its ability to shrink. It was like a child who had been given his favorite toys. Touching him gently, Long Houchen smiled, "This works as well. At least it'll be much easier for you to stay by my side. After evolving this time, you shouldn't need to come back to here very often anymore." The silver light from the domain of instant flash appeared below the entire squad, and with a flash of purplish silver light, they tore through space. Only after 2 whole hours since they had left did a few figures slowly appear in the distance, gazing in this direction. The soul fire in their eyes leaped about as they experienced a multitude of emotions. The return of the bright glimmer of hope immediately brought great joy to Long Xingyu. Of course, he was never that worried in the first place. Having gained the recognition of the divine throne of eternity and creation, it was impossible for Long Houchen's life to be threatened so easily. Just when they were about to decide the date of the wedding for Long Houchen and Kia, as well as the other couples in the bright glimmer of hope, Long Houchen told Long Xingyu the demon god emperor's likely actions. So they had to push back this joyous matter. Long Houchen immediately wrote a letter for the Night Temple to hand to the headquarters of the Union. At the same time, he quickly gathered the upper echelon of the Night Temple to discuss countermeasures. Although it was impossible for the demons to reignite the holy war immediately, they needed to take preventative measures. Long Houchen had even guessed the objective that the demon god emperor would restart the war for. Demon Race, Modu, Demon Emperor Palace. The main hall. The demon god emperor sat high up on the throne and leaned on its huge back. At the top of the throne back was a huge dragon's head. 2 red gemstones shone faintly from where its eyes were. Arbao, who wore the same black, luxurious robes, stood beside the demon god emperor silently. His gaze was cold, stagnant and hollow, as if his body was not capable of thought. It was so quiet that even the drop of a pin could be heard. It was so silent that it seemed like there wasn't even a grain of dust there. However, 5 demons actually stood below. The demon at the very front had a head full of long, purple hair. His face was handsome and his pupils were purple. He carried a special presence, which could invoke a sense of beauty among people. He was the moon demon god, Agars. Beside Agars was the star demon god, Visago. Visago, who was normally always extremely calm and wise, seemed to be think about something. He clearly seemed uneasy today, as if he could sense something bad. 3 more demon gods stood behind them. They were the demon god of death Samijina, and the hell demon god Marbas of the 5 great demon gods, as well as the bear demon god Vale4, who ranked 6th out of the 72 demon god pillars. The 5 demon gods had been summoned there by the demon god emperor. They had no idea what had happened. However, as soon as they had set foot in the demon god palace, they felt a pressure they had never experienced before. The terrifying pressure was enough for powerhouses like them to struggle to breath, like something heavy pressed against their chests. The demon god emperor on the throne seemed very calm, but it had already been an hour since they had entered the main hall. The demon god emperor had remained like that the entire time. However, the pressure in the air only grew heavier. The 5 demon gods had followed the demon god emperor for more than 300 years. They knew that the calmer and quieter the demon god emperor seemed, the more his emotions affected him. The 5 demon gods were even afraid to look at each other to see what others were thinking. They stood there straight with their heads lowered slightly, waiting quietly. The demon god emperor seemed just as easygoing as usual, but if he really did get angry, not a single demon would be able to bear his terrifying wrath. The demon god of death Samijina could even remember clearly that around 360 years ago, the demon god emperor's anger that time had even changed the fiend clan's entire situation. The original demon god of death was directly killed by the demon god emperor, which was why he had the chance to inherit this position. The demon god emperor finally broke the silence. He lifted his right hand slowly and it landed on the arm of his throne. It was such a simple action, but it attracted everyone's attention immediately. The 5 demon gods instinctively looked at the demon god emperor, but what they saw were a pair of extremely deep eyes, like they were staring into the abyss. The 5 of them could not help but shiver as their internal fear and dread intensified. Albao felt a completely different feeling as he stood beside the demon god emperor. His cultivation had basically skyrocketed in the recent years. He would basically make strides in his cultivation every year. Even he felt that he was getting closer and closer to his father's cultivation. But now, during the hour that the demon god emperor remained silent in, Albao knew he was wrong, because he suddenly felt very clearly that the disparity between him and his father was as wide as ever, like comparing a firefly to the moon. The demon god emperor slowly stood up from his throne. He seemed no different than an ordinary man. He had even used his arms to push off the armrests slowly. However, as he stood up, the 5 demon gods below dropped to their knees almost at the same time. They said politely, "Your Majesty." The demon god emperor was definitely not in the mood to treat them like brothers. Instead, he was a merciless, unmatched emperor of the demons in that moment. "Visago, stand up," the demon god emperor said calmly. With his arms behind his back, he looked at the star demon god as his eyes gradually lit up. Visago trembled instinctively, before slowly rising. His head remained lowered as he said politely, "Your Majesty." The demon god emperor smiled. His smile seemed very peaceful, even slightly warm. He slowly made his way down from where the throne was. Basically, with every step he took, Visago would tremble gently. The pressure weighed on his heart heavily. Only when he arrived before Visago did the demon god emperor stop. However, the demon prophet's body actually trembled unconsciously. "Have you already sensed something?" the demon god emperor asked with a gentle smile. Visago said nothing. He dared not to, because from the moment he had set foot in the main hall, he felt a hint of the aura of death. This aura came from himself. How could he not be afraid? The demon god emperor said indifferently, "I just don't know whether your prophecy is correct or not. Why don't you guess whether you'll be leaving here alive today, or dying on the spot?" "Your Majesty." Agars, who still knelt beside Visago, paled in fright. He instinctively raised his head and called out. He was the closest to Visago, but he had never thought that today, the demon god emperor's anger would be directed towards Visago. He could not think of what the star demon god had done at all, to actually make the demon god emperor angry for the first time in hundreds of years. "Shut up," the demon god emperor said coldly. He raised his right foot and placed it on Agar's shoulder with lightning speed. Immediately, Agar's shot off like a cannonball, slamming into the walls of the main hall with a great rumble. Large pieces of shattered rock fell down with the moon demon god. The demon god emperor's move made the demon god of death, the hell demon god, and bear demon god prostrate themselves on the ground in fright. They did not even have the courage to raise their heads. They all knew that the demon god emperor trusted, and was on the best terms with the moon demon god and star demon god, and had always treated these two demon gods as brothers. However, something had happened today where the demon god emperor had actually become furious, because of the star demon god, and had immediately turned against the moon demon god. It had to be mentioned that the moon demon clan and the star demon clan possessed decisive weight among the demons. They were only second to the demon god emperor's devil dragon clan. However, even when he had been sent flying by a kick, the moon demon god actually showed no intention of fighting back in that moment. After falling to the ground, he knelt there once again, and dared not to utter another word. "Raise your head. Look at me," the demon god emperor said plainly. Visago raised his head slowly. There was only anguish in his eyes. He could clearly sense the killing intent from the demon god emperor. He was the great prophet of the demons, but his abilities to foresee matters was completely useless against the demon god emperor. This was because among the demons, no one knew better besides him that the demon god emperor had already become an existence that surpassed everything in this realm. He had reached a completely different realm of cultivation. In the past, when the demon god emperor had completed his breakthrough, the star demon god was right by his side, guarding him. He had personally witnessed the demon god emperor's impossible breakthrough, and knew that the seventh demon god emperor was the greatest powerhouse of all of the demons' history. If any demon clan wanted to rebel against him, it would only end up as a joke. Looking at Visago, the demon god emperor said slowly, "Visago, I trusted you so much. I have always treated you as my right-hand man. For our race, you have always done everything you could, but did you know that as the prophet of our race, your one mistake has ruined the future of our clan?" His voice was not loud, but orange light would flash across the star demon god with every word he uttered. When he reached his question at the end, red blood had actually already oozed out from Visago's mouth and nose. Although the demon god emperor did not directly touch him, the methods he used were far more terrifying than what he did to the moon demon god. He directly harmed his soul. Visago smiled bitterly. "If I've guessed correctly, it should be the piece of news from over a month ago. Your Majesty, have you determined the veracity of it?" The demon god emperor nodded. His eyes finally ceased to be calm. Coldness swept out wildly. "That's right. He's still alive. Tell me, why?" "No, that's impossible," Visago cried out. In that moment, he seemed to forget about the terror of the demon god emperor. "Impossible? Can my eyes deceive me?" Not only did he appear, he even stopped me from taking away the god of nature. He even conversed with me. What I hear might be false, but my eyes do not lie. What else do you have to say? Visago sucked in a deep breath, and the terror in his eyes suddenly vanished. It was replaced by a special color. "Your Majesty, I'm not wrong. My prophecies can't be wrong. He really did die that day. I've sensed for his aura of life many times in the past, and for this, I've conducted many prophecies as well. The results are all the same. It's impossible for a prophecy directed at a single person to be wrong." The demon god emperor squinted his eyes. "Are you saying that I saw wrong and I heard wrong?" After a moment of silence, Visago seemed to decide on something. His eyes lit up like two resplendent stars and he said, "Please calm down, Your Majesty. I understand my fate. Since that's the case, allow me to do one last thing for the demons. I am willing to sacrifice my life for one last prophecy. Whether he's dead or alive, his body will bear the aura of when Your Majesty killed him. With my life as the price, I should be able to see the reason why he's still alive. You can't. You can't." With a flash, the moon demon god arrived before the demon god emperor. He knelt down and begged, "Your Majesty, ever since Visago became the star demon god, he had done much for the race. Even if it's not meritorious, it was still hard work. I am willing to launch a surprise attack against the Temple Alliance and bring Long Houchen before you, for you to handle. After hearing Long Houchen's name, Arbao, who stood before the throne, suddenly stiffened. His hollow eyes suddenly shone with purple light, and sharp killing intent immediately erupted. You? The demon god emperor snorted coldly. Right now, it's even difficult to say whether you're his opponent. All right, Visago. I'll give you this opportunity. You can start right now. As he said that, he lifted his left foot and sent Agar's flying once more. At the same time, a ball of purple light formed a bubble around Agar's, sealing him in. Not even his voice could escape the bubble. Looking at the demon god emperor, who had grown calm once more, a smear of despair flashed through Visago's eyes. He knew that nothing else was possible anymore. Aside from the moon demon god, the three other demon gods continued to prostrate there without uttering a single word. Visago let out a miserable smile and slowly knelt before the demon god emperor. Your Majesty, I hope you can look after my clansmen in exchange for my sacrifice. Feng Xiu looked at him coldly. You can start. Visago did not receive the answer he wanted. His eyes were rather blank as he stood up again. He made his way out of the hall. When he passed over the three demon gods on the ground, he paused slightly, before taking another dozen or so steps forwards and stopping. The orange light gradually grew stronger as he walked. When he stopped, it had become extremely bright. The demon god emperor waved his arm and a powerful pulse of spiritual energy swept the demon god of death, the hell demon god, and the bear demon god aside. The three demon gods fell to one side as they remained silent. The moon demon god Agars began to panic, but he was afraid of directly breaking out of the demon god emperor's seal. Otherwise, the demon god emperor's wrath would definitely include him as well. The demon god emperor could lay his hands on the star demon god, so it was possible that he too might. Visago slowly lifted his arms up beside him with his palms pointed up. They each held an orange crystal ball. Soft chanting appeared and the intense orange light on his body began to surge upwards. The demon god emperor only looked at him coldly. His gaze was frigid. There was no pity at all. Visago's chanting gradually went from soft to loud, while the intense orange light turned into flames. This was a strange type of fire. Visago's clothes actually gradually burned and vaporized under the flames, while his body began to grow transparent and bright. This video will end